Welcome to the Big Fundamental Podcast, Ken's Fives podcast on the San Antonio Spurs and NBA basketball. I'm Jackson Floyd, Evan Klosky, Tom Petrini. We threw out the rundown. We had whole new rundown here. Boban Marjanovic, 31-17. No, the NBA announced last night amid all the coronavirus concerns and just as everything unfolded, the NBA is suspended, guys. Shocking, I think, just how everything unfolded.
It's been wall-to-wall coverage. If anybody's been keeping track of this on ESPN, on Kens5.com as well. I mean, this isn't just a sports thing, obviously, but I will say that the sports world sort of coming to a stop together is just sort of the beginning, because those are where the largest social gatherings are, and the number one thing for us all to do is limit and to have social distancing. And the fact that the NBA will now cease operations for at least 30 days. I shouldn't say cease operations, because teams right now can still practice. So the Spurs can practice by themselves, just like we're at work together. But there will be no games for 30 days. I saw that the NBA owners would like to reevaluate that position after the 30 games. Mark Cuban, who has sort of been the spokesperson with a game going on during the NBA kind of shutting down everything after Rudy Gobert's case of obviously having a positive test with the coronavirus, and now we know Donovan Mitchell as well has the coronavirus. Everybody else with the Utah Jazz has been tested, and they found negative. I'm shocked that they were able to get 58 tests.
That's a big question that kind of surrounded that. Joe Ryan-Eagle was asking that last night as this unfolded. Tom, you were here with me as this news kind of broke, and I think our jaws were just on the floor for half an hour maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we cover the coronavirus developments every day, and I've long since stopped being surprised by things, but this still shocked me. And it's a major thing. It's pretty much unprecedented to have, and it's not just the NBA now. NHL, MLB, professional soccer,
rugby, USL,
NCAA tournament,
the Valero Texas Open.
That's all today. The UIL tournament today.
Which honestly, I'm surprised they even got through the 4 games they played. Right now, Cole High School is finishing out the UIL tournament as they suspended it. They didn't cancel it. March Madness is canceled.
It's canceled.
It would be shorter to do a list of things that haven't been canceled. Disneyland is closed, people. But I think last night was an important moment for America in terms of taking this thing seriously. Tom Hanks got it. I mean, I think there were a lot of people who, this is a serious risk, and there were a lot of people who were not treating it that way. And now with these things happening, it's kind of hard to discount it at this point.
And I do want to piggyback off that point, because you're 1,000% correct. Rudy Gobert, I think, has been getting slammed in social media. First, let me say this. There is no evidence that Gobert gave it to Donovan Mitchell. It's very possible that Donovan Mitchell gave it to Gobert. We just don't know, because honestly, and the biggest thing is, we are still at the inception of the current. There is no stop to it. We know how the flu works. We don't really know how the coronavirus works. We kind of can base it off other countries, but here's the big picture sort of thing. And Gobert came out on Instagram. He apologized. He said he didn't take it seriously. And I think a lot of us as a whole, as a country, need to ask ourselves, did we take it as seriously as we should have 48 hours ago? How many of us were joking around about it? Or how many of us scoffed at the idea that we should cancel games and stuff? If there is a big picture here, it's that really Rudy Gobert is at the center of possibly saving us down the road by limiting so many social gatherings, because the NBA not only was still going on, there were still fans in the stands. Of course, they were moving towards removing fans, but they weren't thinking about the players. I mean, it usually takes something to happen to be like, oh crap, this is now serious. And Gobert was sort of patient zero in that regard, and because of it, everyone is now deflecting away from each other versus bullying through and continuously keeping this going.
As you mentioned, kind of how everything unfolded last night. Rudy Gobert was kind of patient zero in this situation here as the one who kind of identified to the Utah Jazz he was having flu-like symptoms. This was a few days ago this happened. So they do a flu test that's negative. They test for strep, do a couple other tests that's negative. At that point, it's Wednesday morning, and they inform the league, hey, we're going to get a coronavirus test conducted here for Rudy Gobert. And at that point, the league is in the process of reassessing some things. Calls between the governor's office, calls with owners, calls with the league front office, all kind of trending towards the idea of playing these games without fans. And then once Rudy Gobert's positive test came down, that's when things kind of switched. That's when the league suspended things indefinitely, and they've been emphasizing indefinitely here. I think it's a rush to say that the whole thing is canceled. And we'll talk a little bit later on about what the future holds for the season and the postseason and things like that. There's still a lot of questions coming out through all of this. And then what unfolded after that, after the league suspended, especially in Oklahoma City, is just, it comes across as chaotic, I think, but just the way the players were locked down in the stadium for a while in the arena there in Oklahoma City. Jazz players aren't able to fly home. They're renting buses to fly them there. Oklahoma City players are able to get out and treated in local hospitals to get tested and things like that. And then, Donovan Mitchell comes out today, was a second player who came forward. I think that you're correct in saying we don't know how this unfolded between the two of them. The storyline just kind of leans towards Gobert's way. And, there was that video that surfaced of him touching the microphones.
Which was a bad look, and I get that.
Yeah, and he admitted that, on, like you said, on social media today, apologized for the carelessness he had towards that.
And he said, I hope that me doing this and this story leads other people to take this a lot more seriously, because I didn't, and now I have this thing. I just want to say, Twitter in a crisis, undefeated. Like, one of the more entertaining days on that app yesterday, just with everybody chiming in, and not making, some making jokes about a very serious situation, but I mean, this is something that's top of mind for, I think, all Americans right now.
Yeah, and I do want to say this, and I think us as Americans right now have to understand that this is a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah.
It is, the World Health Organization has said that this is a pandemic. So we have to all recognize that none of us on this planet. I mean, the last one, the case we keep going back to is the 1918 Spanish flu, right?
Yeah, influenza.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're 98 years old or whatnot, or 102,
102,
you were a baby. So there's really no one on this earth who can really talk back to that time. We're just going back to readings and saying that the places that kind of stopped people going to school, saw less, and we're seeing Ohio has jumped on board to do that. So there's a lot more that's about to happen. The sports world is sort of step one, but if you go to Italy, you go to Iran, and you go to some of these countries that didn't take the necessary precautions when it was surfacing other places, it's a total lockdown there. Do not leave for 14 days. So if we don't take this seriously, that is where this will head, because there are examples in the world of where it is happening that way. We cannot be blind to that. But the positive end is that there are countries out there, Singapore, the Hong Kong also, that has done an amazing job of taking this very seriously, and they have seen it tapered, and they have done their due diligence. So, the social distancing hopefully helps us trend towards that sort of arena. But I also do want to stress that as we get more tests, which seems to be an emphasis right now, and rightfully so, numbers will go up, because we are going to have more information about people who have it, as opposed to what we have right now, where less tests means less information. So just understand it's not there to scare you, and these numbers are going to go up, but it is going to be serious, and it's going to help us quarantine the ones that we have to quarantine. They will be taken out of society, and then over time, we can sort of flatten out that line that you're seeing a lot on Twitter right now. Yeah,
I mean, I think, social gatherings is one of the big steps that CDC are saying. If you can avoid those, limit those as possible, that can help kind of, you said, flatten that curve. Other things you can do, wash your hands, hand sanitizer, social distancing. Lots of great steps on KINS5.com. We've got you covered for coronavirus there and on air as well. Guys, it's not just the Jazz and the Thunder, though, that are affected. In between, Gobert coming down with symptoms and a positive test, there were teams that they played in this window there, and the NBA is kind of reacting to that as well. The Raptors are one of the teams that's self-quarantining. The Pistons, I think.
Yeah, the Pistons, the Knicks, the Cavaliers. here's my question, right? So those 6 teams, the Jazz and the other 5 teams that they played, are self-quarantined. Like, who's to say that Gobert didn't get it from? I think in 2 weeks ago they played the Cavs.
Yeah.
The Spurs played the Cavs
right after. Yeah.
You know, like, who's to say that somebody in the Spurs doesn't have, like? It really, it just that's the way that this virus works. It will spread from person to person. Some people will show bigger symptoms than others, and you know, I think it's really like a league-wide thing. It should be.
It is, and it's a worldwide thing. I mean, this whole situation, we're going, like you said, we're going to see more cases as more tests come out. There's going to be community exposure for a lot of people. That is the reality that a lot of public health experts are bracing for and warning us about. You know, basically saying that it's inevitable that communities are going to be exposed to this, and communities already are being exposed.
Especially
to this.
if you look at the West Coast, the Seattle area, California, Northern California, especially these areas, are very well affected.
Even Houston.
Even Houston.
We're
I mean,
seeing
it's
community
seeing
spread.
more here in Texas. Again, still no community spread here in San Antonio yet. To the Spurs end, they haven't said too much other than just the official statements.
Yeah.
You've seen a few players like DeJounte Murray take to Twitter. I think Drew Eubanks tweeted that he was just so sad about all this as it unfolded.
And you got to remember also Marco Bellinelli a week or 2 ago. You know, he was tweeting about all the stuff that was happening in Italy. So I mean, there are a lot of players, Instagram as well. You know, I saw Lonnie Walker and whatnot. Just sort of just, I mean, bummed out. And we're all bummed out. I think we all recognize the severity of what's going on right now, and you're allowed to be bummed out that sports is canceled, essentially. There's a difference between being bummed out and arguing that life should go on. You know, there is a fine line there, but it's sad. It's, you know, and these players, work their butts off like all year. Like all these players across all platforms, and for it to be canceled, it's a big blow, and especially for all those collegiate athletics in the spring.
NCAA tournament canceled, especially for these one and dones who, that was their chance to make a name for themselves. Maybe, they're not going to get to do that.
And obviously certain leagues have kind of used like the 30 days. The MLB has suspended opening day for another 2 weeks. They pushed it back 2 weeks. And I think just the biggest thing to understand is this is all fairly fluid, and this probably is going to have to take months, not necessarily a couple weeks. I think things are going to change, and hopefully over time it'll change for the positive. And the hiatus from the NBA and given the 30 days will allow them to think of contingency plans. We heard Mark Cuban this morning on a radio show mention that there is a possibility kind of being circulated out there between the owners that maybe they play about 5 to 7 games to end the regular season, just completely shorten it, and then have your postseason. Which, if that were the case, the Spurs would mathematically almost be eliminated, and you would kind of know the teams that, at least from the West. I mean, the Grizzlies would have to lose all of them essentially to not make
fall
it.
Out of it.
So that is an option on the table that at least we heard from an NBA owner is that you just kind of make a shortened season, similar to what happened when the Spurs won their first title with a shortened season with the lockout, and just sort of trudge forward and have a playoff experience because. Anyway, for the NBA, that's where they make their money, and that's the most important thing is a lot of businesses and economies. These are big money makers, and that the longer we put that off and we just straight up cancel, it's going to create a monster deficit in books, and it's going to affect 2021. Eventually we'll get over the hump, but it's naturally going to have an effect.
For the San Antonio Spurs part, R.C. Buford did say there are still plenty of questions up there, and I think when he's saying that, you're talking about not just when they come back and what happens next, but the revenue side of it, like what fans can expect. Are there going to be refunds, things like that? Still so many things to address as the games are missed, and then. Greg Popovich. Tom and I, as this news kind of unfolded, was at an event. We were supposed to have an interview with Coach Popovich. He comes into the event and just says, I can't speak to people. Spurs have barred us from these public speakings and things like that. He did offer an insight, though, at the event, and this was for the Heroes. And Tom, you can speak more about the event.
Yeah, so the event was Heroes at the Grill at Leon Springs. It's an organization called Wish for Our Heroes, and they give direct financial assistance to wounded veterans and their families. Talk to Jeff, the guy who started it. A couple of the wounded veterans who were there volunteering. It was an awesome event. We'll have a full story on that. But we got some video of Popovich addressing the crowd, and he started by kind of joking and saying, I'm not even supposed to be here. Don't tell on me. And he said it's getting kind of crazy. NCAA is at the time they were considering doing it with no fans in attendance.
Yeah.
And he touched on the possibility of a hiatus. And he said, just watch the Dallas game over and over again. Don't watch any of the other games. At
first he couldn't even remember who they'd beaten. He was like,
Right.
the wins are so few and far between, they're hard to remember.
Right. Yeah. In another life, he's a very successful chef and a very successful stand-up comedian. But Matt Bonner came into the event, and Jackson went for the handshake, and he was like, coronavirus.
Switch to the fist bump there. Yeah.
And Bonner actually was great because we asked him as a former player and as a current announcer, what would it be like to call a game in an empty arena? And he said that when he was playing in Italy, he actually had played in a game where there were no fans in attendance because it was like their rival team, and there was like a planned hooligan brawl essentially, which is wildly entertaining in its own right.
Yeah, we can have like the hooligan brawl podcast theory
later. But so he
because I want to know Tom's thoughts mostly.
He basically played in an empty arena though.
Yeah.
And he said it felt kind of like a scrimmage.
Yeah, I think he emphasized the word weird a few times
Yes.
telling the story as well.
Yeah, and this is just such a profoundly impactful thing that's happening. And we saw it impact the event last night, and Pop said this about an hour before the news broke.
Yeah, we got back from that event and sat down at our desks.
I was ready to go
unfolding.
home. It had been a long day. I'd been wearing a monkey suit for like 8 hours.
Monkey suit.
And then I was like, oh, okay, I guess the season's suspended. Gotta cover that.
Yeah. And then as the news unfolded, we had all that kind of covered there. And I still think there's a lot of questions kind of circulating. You did mention that Mark Cuban had spoken about what is next. We do have a clearer picture now that, it sounds like it's going to be 30 days. They're spending this time to reassess what to do once those 30 days kind of end. What do you think the right move is? Is it to play without fans? Is it to play the rest of the regular season, 7 games, no games left in the season?
Honestly, and again, it's such a fluid circumstance that any opinion today could change tomorrow. 48 hours ago, again, we were all just like, angry that this was even the NBA was even in consideration of halting the season, and then. And credit to Adam Silver because the Gobert thing happened. Like it was like bang bang. It was Gobert's out with coronavirus, and it was like Adam Silver was like, "We're done." Like
if there's one thing you have to say about Adam Silver, this is a constant thing for him. His ability to react correctly in these situations.
And it was very evident through I think the NBA and the stories that were coming out about what are we gonna do and this and that. That it weighed heavily on Adam Silver, and like this, he was just, I think, afraid to take that final leap. And then when that happened, it was like, boom, that's all,
Yeah.
So whatever it might be, but yeah, I think, theoretically speaking, what you would need to do is probably you would either have to test all NBA athletes, or B, you'd have to self-quarantine them for 2 weeks. And then the only way to continue operations would be to self-quarantine all them, the officials, and some staff members at arenas to make sure it's all happening. And then you can hold games without fans, and that would essentially be a safe environment for all because you would know that everyone's okay and there's no sharing, and you would essentially go home. Consider there's like a litany. The problem is like if you travel. What's to say that if you're okay and then you travel somewhere else that you're not okay? You'd essentially also have to create a place where you're all together. So I don't know what essentially the solution is because I don't know when we're going to be able to have large social gatherings again because there's also some evidence that when when you see it taper off, the response is, okay, we can start getting back to normal, and then it will actually spike like quicker than it was actually progressing before, because so you have to really wait until this thing is sort of dead in the water, and then slowly resume back to real life. And we're in a time where we're just trying to buy time for the medical experts to come up with some sort of solution and to get these tests. It's all this process is. It's not necessarily the fear of the virus itself. There are at-risk individuals, the elderly, the ones that have pre-existing conditions that need to take serious steps, but it's just more so making sure that we can spread this out over a length of time so that our health systems can manage that. And when you factor all that stuff in, I don't know. I just don't know if 30 days will necessarily be like, okay, we can do this with no fans in the stands sort of deal. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of a skeptic. Like in my head, Cuban mentioned like 60 days, which I think is kind of judging on what other countries have done, where like, in China, when they took about 2 months for them to kind of feel like they're a little bit out of the woods.
Yeah.
So to me, I think this is a month's battle. This isn't a week's battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree there. I'm in agreement with a lot of the Spurs fans out there. Just throw the whole season away, pretend like it didn't happen. No. I saw a lot of people celebrating, saying, A, don't have to watch the Spurs lose for another little while. B, is the playoff streak going to stay alive? This is maybe the only time in NBA history where, well, if the season ended today, isn't just a dumb, impossible hypothetical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there might be an announcement today or in the coming days that, they just decide to scrap it. And, or at the end of those 30 days or 60 days or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I tend to see that. Then what happens?
Yeah, I tend to see that towar's the end of that stretch. Like,
right.
They're going to really
they're going to explore their
possibilities.
Options.
Yeah.
Right. And it's there's just no way for any of us to know right now because we don't know where this is going to progress to. Although I can say from covering this for the past month or so, like I've aged like 3 years in the past month. It's been constant. It's been every day, and it's been building every day.
Yeah.
Like this is a snowballing situation.
I know you mentioned you liked the tweets going on about, playoff streak continues. I'm really enjoying the what a year the last day has been. That's my favorite kind of overworked Twitter joke going around there.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about it before. This NBA season, right?
Yeah.
This has to be one of the weirdest, most bizarre NBA seasons in history. I don't think there's any arguing that.
I mean, going into the season, it started with the Daryl Morey tweet, the Hong Kong protests kind of in support of them, and that opened up just a whole can of worms involving the whole Chinese market and how the government responded to that. And then, as everything unfolded, you got the Kobe Bryant death at the beginning of the 2020 year, and then, the coronavirus situation as this all unfolds.
No, I mean, this is a seminal moment in history.
Yeah.
This is going to be something that we talk about forever.
Yeah.
I think we're all going to look back and it's going to be, man, like it was a crazy time. And, again, down the line, it will serve us as a better country because I think having this experience will have us be more prepared and take things more seriously.
Yeah.
And that's why some countries also are doing a lot better now because they had SARS and Ebola and they were scared with that. Yeah. So now this came around, they're like, oh crap, we know what happened the last time. We got to stop this dead in its tracks. Yeah. So, all you can do is live and learn. And this has absolutely been an interesting NBA season.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a sports year. I mean, outside of college football, which was able to complete everything and the NFL, I should say. Down the road, who knows what's going to happen with those sports?
Yeah.
We're hoping that in warmer months things sort of change and we can move on with our lives, and that that's a goal, and we'll worry about that down the road. But as of now, I mean, this is going to be just one of those weird parts of history that we're like, man, I mean, vacant. 2022. You look on Wikipedia, you're just gonna see no champion.
I saw somebody said about 15 years from now, I'm going to tell my son that the Raptors were defending NBA champions for 2 years, and he's going to say, so they won back-to-back titles, and I'm going to say they were defending NBA champions for 2 years.
Yeah.
But we're here talking about the sports aspect of it. But this is a very serious issue. I think Italy's death toll is up to 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And it's an extremely serious thing. It's not something that we should be taking lightly at all.
And again, this is a sports podcast, but it's important to recognize that the sports world is now dead center of the entire country and where the next steps are going to go, because sports is just the beginning. Education's next, with keeping kids home and teachers home. And if it doesn't get better, it's going to go into lockdown. And that's not to bring fear. I want to make it very clear that the death rate is still low by its standards, and that the ones who are affected are the ones who are elderly or have pre-existing conditions. But the reason why this is so serious and why we have to take it seriously is because even though we are not in the at-risk group, even though the general population is not of the at-risk group, we can still provide it to others. We can still pass it along to those who are at risk. And that's what happens. And more importantly, when our hospitals are getting overflooded, which isn't happening right now, that's the fear is that if you flood the hospitals and they're overwhelmed and they're overworked, it's going to cause problems like, again, in Italy, where there are hospitals that have to make life and death situations. Who gets oxygen, who doesn't? And that's not saying that if you get the coronavirus, you're in trouble. It's not that. If you get the coronavirus, you're going to be sick, and most likely you are going to be fine. Eventually, you're gonna be sick and you're gonna get fine. That's what's going to happen. But there are just ramifications because A, we do not know enough about this really. B, it is it can sleep in you for 2 to 14 days without knowing, which is different than the flu, which kind of pops up in 5 to 6 days. So there are just a bunch of ramifications where we need to be preemptive and precautionary versus reactive. And at this stance, we're kind of teetering on reactive. Yeah. And we're trying to grasp on the precautionary at the right time. But I don't want anyone to freak out that if you have it, it's okay. It's just we mostly need to extract it out of society so we can all be fine and as a collective unit.
I tend to be the optimist on this podcast, not just in terms of, I think the Spurs always have a chance, or, I like the way things trend in this organization. And I'm optimistic that last night, and not just in the basketball world, but everything else that unfolded in the past 12 to 24 hours was a watershed moment in this event, as we talked about. You've seen the response unfold today. The response is going to keep unfolding this week throughout sports, through the schools, as you mentioned. Colleges here in San Antonio are moving to virtual classes, which is a great step in the right direction. We're seeing more people understand the disease, understand the symptoms of it, and kind of identify, I might have it, and take those steps. Cities are addressing those steps. As San Antonio, as a city, it has set up a hotline to help you out and things like that. And I'm optimistic as well that I think in 30 days or in 60 days, we can turn back to the sports aspect of this. I think we will see more basketball in June or July, not in April or May. But and I do think that at some point in time, later on this year, we will be talking about who was crowned an NBA champion. It's not going to be the Spurs, but
And to your point, actually, there was already discussions about the NBA possibly moving back its season, to not compete with the NFL and say, look, let's have our own period and let's just dominate into July and August. So in a sense, if that does happen, and what we're all hoping for to happen, and certainly June and July is sort of where I figure we're kind of getting to the safer region if we do what we need to do, it might actually lead to the NBA saying, maybe this works long term. Maybe we do need to push the NBA season back and extend it into the summer to create more attention on us at the beginning of the season. So that's certainly, you think of just reactions that could happen after this is all done. That's certainly, I think, out there in the world that hopefully we can get to. we can have all the sports in play again, life will eventually resume to normal. It will. That is going to happen. This, in a sense, this is it's going to be long days and long weeks, but in the grand picture of our lives, this is going to be a short time. But we do need to take the right precautions. And golf at least is an isolated sport. You're just one player by yourself shooting a ball with a caddy. So we should have some golf to watch.
Goody.
The Valero. So I don't know if you're interested in some par fives, Zach. Par 5 here, a par 3 there. At least there won't be fans in the stands here for the Valero Texas Open, but that will be an escape.
Yeah.
We were talking beforehand. We will try to do our best job to create the escape that we don't have, which is the sports world. And I heard someone talk about this. It was tough because you think back to like 9/11. That was a finite period of time because you took time off to grieve, and then sports became sort of the engine that said, let's start moving forward together.
This George Bush Yankee Stadium.
This is a little bit weird because sports can't really be that getaway. So we're all kind of stuck in our heads a little bit, and we're delving onto Netflix and all this stuff. But we here will we'll do our best to kind of create discussions that normally on a week-to-week basis we can't normally have. Think big picture, and it will allow us to spend the time to take a step back and sort of analyze the landscape of things, and see how things are moving week to week, and hopefully every time we come back, it's getting better. It's getting a little bit better. We have an end in sight. I'm hoping. I do think that. If I had to guess, I do think that the playoffs will be played in some regard, even if it's like a Final Four. We're taking the top 4 seeds, and we're going to salvage this and
one and done kind of thing.
Yeah, sort of just cut right to the semifinals.
Super duper asterisk next to whoever wins.
It is what it is. But at that point, even though in the grand scheme of the sport, it would be a huge asterisk, which everybody here in San Antonio knows. Well, like the national public has like 4 or 5 of the Spurs championships with an asterisk. But this one I think would be more of an asterisk in the long term, but in the short term it'd be like, oh, we got some basketball. We can have debates about whether this team deserved to be in the playoffs or not, but like, just give us a little something, and I think that's all we want.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's gonna be tough. Like, not watching basketball games. It's something that I know all of us look forward to. Everyone watching looks forward to.
Yeah.
It's a part of our lives that brings a lot of joy to this community and to the NBA community as a whole. So
yeah.
Not to mention, it's like it's my job. I mean, my job is to cover sports. So
I saw somebody last night say that they had just quit their job to cover the NBA, and they were like, oh, this is a bad thing. I was like, well, it's a good thing that it just got so boring, and there's nothing going on for reporters to cover. Like there's with this situation, we're going to be covering every detail of it.
Yeah.
I don't until the regularly scheduled programming returns, we'll get some interesting programming on the surprise stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see what conversations we have as this trends forward. You can follow along with the Big Fun Pod here on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, on Podbean, wherever you can find your podcast.
Yeah, and I would ask for you, if there is a topic out there that you are interested in, that you're curious about. I mean, I know for us, we got time now. We can run through all the hypotheticals of the off season if we want. Like, I mean,
right.
we got time to kill, and I think we will next time hopefully transition into a bit more sports topics.
Yeah.
We can talk about Keldon and Luka got into the court, and there's all these things that happen with the Spurs that we haven't had since the last time we talked with you. But if there are some bigger topics that you want to talk about, some big questions that you have, like, let it rip, and we'll answer them, because right now we're here for you more than anything. Like, and you're kind of here for us as well. So it's one of those things where we can help each other out and take our minds off things, because that's what we kind of need. We need to do the right thing, and we also need to kind of take breaks from the action a little bit to kind of have our own stuff and to remember there is a life outside of all the seriousness. So you got to be serious, but then also remind to give mental breaks too.
Yeah.
And I just want to close on one last Spurs note. If the season does resume and there's some, like full playing of the games that are left on the schedule, pretty good timing for the Spurs, who have some significant players who were dealing with different injuries. DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, Jakob Poeltl, all significant pieces, and
LaMarcus Aldridge came back and
made a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of remember, you're like, man. I mean, a lot of Spurs fans kind of trash on him. And you're like, wow, he made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So if the season comes back, it will be, in all likelihood, a healthier Spurs team that's playing.
But that's around the league too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, all teams.
Yeah, basketball at full strength, and this podcast will be at full strength as things continue here as well. At Real Tom Petrini, at Evan Klosky, at Jackson Floyd. Let us know your sports conversations you'd like to hear us to provide to you.
At Big Fun Pod.
At Big Fun Pod as well. Follow us on Twitter. And guys, it's been real.
Yeah.
Wait.
We'll see what happens.
Let's
Thank you guys
do
for tuning in.
some social distancing.
There you go.